I've thought of a good metaphor, and it's probably one that's been used before, so I'm not going to patent this or claim that my own brilliance came up with this, but, but nevertheless, it's one that I think is useful. Um, and it's something to consider when you're thinking about the state, when you're thinking about, you know, state related entities like NGOs, or when you're thinking about corporations which have a huge degree of influence over the state. When you think about institutions of the state, okay, when you think about law enforcement and other institutions of the state, you have to kind of think schizophrenically, because what is going on is there the the left hand path is being followed by operators within the state, within the halls of power, within the powers that the corridors of the powers that be. The left hand path is being used quite often, and the way that it's used is in a way that seems to undermine what the right hand path, represented by the state, and its laws and its dictates and what it is ostensibly there to do, the way it's ostensibly there to serve the people. Ha ha ha. But that's its ostensible function, anyhow. So let me explain. You've got laws against murder. Yet you have the state through its various entities committing murders. Not just the CIA, but plenty of other arms of the state do so. You have the state pushing the war on drugs, although I guess that's slackened a little bit because now marijuana has gotten to be almost legal, or is semi-legal. It's legal at least in some places in this country, but there's still the other drugs that are illegal, and the state and the state and its attendant entities. It's not just the state. It's not just the institutions that compose the state, but everything that surrounds the state that is a part of what the state is or represents. They fight the war on drugs, and there are people who are gung ho about taking drugs away, finding the drug dealers and putting them away and confiscating the drugs and preventing the scourge of drugs. Well, you have that happening, while at the same time the left hand of the state is working with drug dealers and smuggling drugs into the country and benefiting from the sale of drugs and the introduction of drugs into various communities. All right, right hand path, left hand path. Right hand path ostensibly enforces justice. Left hand path works in obvious counter purposes to justice in order to simply enrich the powerful. Okay. Child trafficking, right? You see signs everywhere, contact this number for human trafficking, if you suspect human trafficking. You see, I don't know, they have official organs, official institutions about missing kids. I can't remember the name of it right now, but there's an official institution out of Washington, D.C., which is all about keeping track of missing kids and trying to find them and so forth, and ostensibly keeping an eye on child trafficking and child sexual exploitation. Yet on the other hand, the left-hand path, you have the certain dark entities that are benefiting from human trafficking, from sex trafficking, from child sex trafficking. And these are very, very powerful groups. And they're doing, the worst imaginable things to children. And they're doing them at the same time that there are people within the same apparatus on the right-hand side who might be true believers, who might be very gung-ho about ending child sexual exploitation, ending child trafficking. So this can apply to any number of things, but I just chose a couple of things to discuss it, to discuss how this works. So when you think of the state, you can't just think, or when you think of law enforcement, or when you think of the corporate media, or any of these entities that are just a part of this whole conglomerate that is the state and its its allies, or whatever, the rich and the powerful and the influential who control things, right? It's schizophrenic. You can't. It induces schizophrenia in a way, because you have to somehow become aware that the same entity which practices or does its best to practice justice and righteousness and protecting the innocent, and putting criminals behind bars, and stopping and punishing dangerous and violent and exploitative criminal acts against children. That while it is actually, there are entities, there are people working within the state, laboring to do those very things, the left-hand path is doing the very opposite. Okay? So you run the risk of, if you just say, well, the entire apparatus is evil, then that becomes too simplistic in its own regard, and you don't take account for the many people within the system who at least are attempting to do good, or if they're not, if they're not actively attempting to do good, they're at least they're aiming to do good. If it's not, even if they're not doing the best job of it, but they're not aiming to do evil. Then you have the other side of it, the left-hand path, the left hand of these entities, that is the sinister side, and left is synonymous with sinister, and I know left-wing SJWs will be angry with me for portraying the left as sinister, but I don't care. It's metaphorical. So just think of it metaphorically, and if you're still bothered by it, if you're still offended by it, I don't care. So the sinister left-hand path is doing all the things that the right-hand path is forbidding people from doing. The left-hand path of the state and the state related entities is not just not just a scofflaw. It's not just a, it's not just that it fails to enforce things. It actively does things that are perverse and awful and rotten, and destructive and evil. At the same time that the right hand of the state is ostensibly, like the right hand of the state goes down, and this is a stupid kind of dated example, but the in the early 90s, the state goes down and enters Panama and puts an end to Noriega and says, Noriega, you are an evil man, and you're a narco dictator, and you're responsible for the cocaine trade, and we, the righteous United States government, are arresting you and deposing you because of the evils that you've done. Well, at the same time, there are people actively selling drugs, making money off of drugs, who work for the government, and nothing happens to them. They are protected. And like I said, the drugs are bad enough, but the stuff involving kids, that's just like that's enough to make you want to just, I don't know. That's enough to make you realize that you just can't just sit idly by and let stuff happen. You've got to take steps to draw attention to the evils that are going on. But it's complex. It's complicated. It's not every policeman. It's far from being. And I don't like the cops either. But it's not every policeman. It's not every judge. It's not every. There are probably even some clean people on some of the higher levels. But I think the higher you get, the more you are able to get away with things, and the more you are inclined to be up to things that are shady, or maybe you're just some grunt level person who works for the high level shady people. So anyway, that's just a metaphor, a way of thinking about the state, the powers that be, the state apparatus, and how it's a schizophrenic body that is simultaneously aiming to do good and aiming to do bad. And the left hand, or the right hand, in this case, the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. Or maybe it does and it just ignores it, which would make it probably just as bad because it's complicit. I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. My name is Andy Nowicki. Check out my work at altrightnovelist.com.